ages of power.
France. By 1795, the machine had stopped. The terror was over. Robespierre was dead. The screaming crowds had gone home. France had survived the fire, but now it had to survive the ashes. You would think this is the happy ending. The tyrant is gone. Liberty won. But in Paris, the reality was grim. Inflation was rampant. A loaf of bread that cost 45 livres in the morning cost 100 by sunset. Yet while the poor starved, the survivors of the elite threw victims' balls. They danced wildly, celebrating that they were still alive. The adrenaline of the revolution had worn off, leaving a massive, terrifying void. And history tells us one thing about power vacuums: they don't stay empty for long. Meet the Directory. After the chaos of one-man rule, France swung to the opposite extreme. They designed a government specifically to be boring. 5 men, executive power split 5 ways. It was a system designed to prevent another Robespierre, but what they actually created was gridlock. While the directors argued in the palace, the streets were getting weird. This is the rise of the Muscadines, wealthy youth who dressed in outrageous clothes and beat up Jacobins with walking sticks. It was nihilism. The public wasn't just hungry, they were exhausted. They had democratic fatigue. The Directory had 0 money and 0 respect. To survive, they needed a distraction. They looked to the army, specifically to a 26-year-old artillery officer who had been waiting for his moment. Enter Napoleon Bonaparte. The Directory sent him to Italy to lead a distraction campaign. He was given a ragtag army, shoeless, starving, unpaid. Within weeks, he turned them into the most efficient killing machine in Europe. At the Bridge of Arcole, the myth was born. Did he actually charge across alone? Probably not, but the story is what mattered. Usually the government pays the army, but Napoleon was winning so much, looting so effectively, that he started sending millions of francs back to the Directory. He wasn't their employee anymore. He was their sponsor. He ate the same rations as his men. They called him the Little Corporal. By 1797, Paris was too small for him. Why Egypt? Strategically, to cut off Britain's trade. Personally, because Napoleon wanted to be Alexander the Great. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a floating university. He brought 160 scholars, mathematicians, astronomers, biologists. They found the Rosetta Stone. They founded Egyptology. It was the Enlightenment with a sword. But while Napoleon was playing scientist, disaster struck. Admiral Nelson annihilated the French fleet. Napoleon was trapped. This is where Napoleon invents modern narrative control. He controlled the only printing presses in Egypt. In Paris, they didn't hear about the defeat. They heard about a hero conquering the East. Then he did something unforgivable. He abandoned his men. He slipped away on a frigate, leaving his army to die in the sand, and raced back to Paris. October 1799, Napoleon returns. The Directory is collapsing. The people are begging for a savior. The stage is set for a coup. We often think of coups as surgical strikes. The coup of 18 Brumaire was a mess. Napoleon tried to speak to the legislature, but he froze. The politicians swarmed him, calling him a tyrant. He was physically dragged out of the room, shaking. The coup was saved by his brother Lucien. He pointed a sword at Napoleon's chest and shouted to the troops, "If my brother ever betrays freedom, I will kill him with my own hand." It was a lie, but it worked. The drums rolled, the grenades were loaded. The politicians fled through the windows. The Republic didn't end with a bang, it ended with a lie, and the sound of soldiers clearing the room. A new government was formed, the consulate. Napoleon promised peace, he promised order. And unlike the king, and unlike the directory, he actually delivered. But there was a price tag. The press was censored, the elections were rigged, the revolution of liberty, equality, fraternity was over. In 1799, the French people looked at the chaos of democracy and the stability of a dictatorship, and they made their choice. Order is expensive, and the currency you pay with is freedom. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. Are we living in 1799? Look around. Democratic fatigue. Check. Gridlock governments that can't deliver. Check. A public so exhausted by chaos they're willing to trade freedom for someone who gets things done. Check. Napoleon didn't seize power, France handed it to him. They were so tired of the mess, so desperate for stability, that they welcomed the strongman. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and right now, the rhythm sounds familiar. From Hungary to Turkey, from the Philippines to Brazil, we're watching the same script play out. Democracies don't usually die with a bang. They die with applause. When people decide that order matters more than freedom, the directory failed because it couldn't deliver. It was designed to be weak, to prevent tyranny. But weakness invited tyranny anyway. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Napoleon gave France what it needed. He ended the chaos. He built roads, reformed laws, stabilized the currency. For a while, it worked. But the price? Everything the revolution died for. So when you see a leader promise to drain the swamp, to cut through the bureaucracy, to be the one person who can fix everything, remember Napoleon. Remember that the people who give up freedom for security often end up with neither. The power vacuum of 1799 teaches us something vital. Democracy is exhausting, it's messy, it's slow, but the alternatives, they're worse. Because once you hand power to a Napoleon, good luck getting it back. Next time, the general becomes a legend and the legend becomes a monster.